Oh, you're back for more. Well, welcome back. I'm Steve Leahy. This is Open Studio. Last episode we kind of worked out that blue, so this episode we're gonna put that blue to the test. We're gonna get that kind of in a bunch of places, or work on this front fender to kind of get that to work. All right, so just got some of that blue loaded up in here. There we go. So the blue really doesn't appear down in here, except for the back of this strut. But I'm going to put it in anyway, because this is going to be a lot darker. And just like the last episode, this will give me a chance to kind of try this out on different colors to see what it does. And I talked about this in the last episode. Actually, I'm going to thin this out a little bit more. I talked about this in the last episode. This is what I'm talking about as far as getting, understanding a color by using it, by experience. Once I use this color enough, I'll have a really, really good idea of what it does over different colors. And then as I go, it just adds to the toolbox, As I use this color around the painting, I'm not going to be surprised when I go to use it in a spot that, has a different base color on it, a different blocked in color. So that's what this is. It's kind of like a mini paint fact-finding mission. So the dark areas in the back of this fender are really dark. They're very brown too. But I'm gonna run this blue just to see what it looks like on the brown, and now I can, like I said, I can kind of drop that in the brain catalog so that when I use this color over brown, I'll know what it does. It turns kind of a bluish violet, which is nice. Okay. Back to the details. So the rust on this part is also darker brown on this bottom panel here. There's not a lot of blue in that at all. I've got a lot of blue in here, but it was the same kind of thing. It's just me kind of working with it. But up here, that's where all this blue really happens. The other thing I noticed as I was kind of backing up from the painting after the last episode, this blue color here, the really light blue color, I'm almost positive, I'd have to go back and watch the videos, I'm almost positive I made that with just opaque blue and white, because it has that same kind of greenish cast that I was trying to cancel out with this blue. Now, that's not a big deal. Because like I talked about in the last episode with the Island tint, the Island Creek tint blue that I stole the bead out of last episode, I can tint that green away from that and then just bump that back to that steel, like really light pale steel blue. That's not a big deal. But that won't happen till later anyway, because that's the kind of the final highlights on this, that the glinty, shiniest, relatively shiniest part of this fender are the last step to go in. So another thing I find that it's easy to get caught with when you're doing a real repetitive pattern like this rust, from me, once I kind of start to get it, understand it, I'll kind of start going on autopilot. And that can be a dangerous thing for me, because I'll assume I know what the pattern is, but which means I will stop looking at the reference photo, and that's always a bad thing. It's just, there's so much going on in the reference photo that's different across this bike, across any photo really. So once I find like I get it down and then I start assuming I know what I'm doing, the result is the entire thing will have this even pattern, and it's not really what it is in actuality. There's a lot of different things going on that I would miss if I wasn't constantly looking back at the reference photo. I would love to find the owner of this bike Um, it I don't know if it would be tough, because I've seen this bike at the at the World of Wheels in Boston several years in a row, and I'm sure, because obviously it isn't ever going to get restored by the current owner, which is great. Someone's going to know who owns this. It'd be nice to find, especially once the painting is done, to find the owner and be able to talk to him about his or her bike. I love to try, when I take photos, especially at car shows and things like that, I love to, I think it's important for me to, talk to the owner, especially if, I'm going to be doing a painting of the vehicle or, bike or whatever. Sometimes it doesn't happen, and sometimes you just get the vibe that, people are there to show their car and they don't want to, they just want to hang out, they don't want to, whatever. Although that's a rarity at most car events, cruise nights and things like that. Most people want to talk about their cars or bikes or whatever. Yeah, this blue is awesome. This blue is great. It's working. It's so neat that it's really the darkest and the lightest details that are going to really kind of set this off and really give it that patina that it has. But all this foundation stuff is what really will kind of give it that authentic look. Really give it that rusty kind of corroded metal look. Most of the fork still has paint on it, so there's not a lot of this open steel. But the top of this fender took a lot of wear, as would you would expect. And the steel blue color does appear everywhere, just like the brown color. So these two in tandem will be a nice mix to have these ready to go. Yeah, this is feeling really green here. Alright, so I think, well, I'll keep going. I was going to switch gears and kind of correct that, but I'll correct that in a little bit. And it's a simple thing. It just takes a really light dusting of like a reddish color. It'll immediately blow out that green. But I do want to get that done before I get to the point where I'm putting in those final highlights, obviously, because if I need to adjust this after the highlights, I have to repaint in the highlights, and I don't want to have to go through all that. So that's a ways off, so I don't have to worry about it, but I do want to get it done, so I don't have to think about it. And then, yeah, we'll do that before the end of this episode, because there were other places I put that blue in, and seeing now the interaction between the browns and the other colors. So what I'm looking at here, this is what I'm looking at. So now that I've started adding all these colors, the browns and the deeper steel blue, that green is popping out more to me, because now I have something relative to compare it to. But on an area like out here, where I just put that blue in right on the tank, it looks really nice and blue, because I'm looking at it relative to the HD stencil. So it looks fine here. But I know when I start adding all the brown to that, that's going to do the same thing. Same thing with that little guy right there. That's all going to kind of give me that green cast as I put the other colors in next to it. So what I'll do before the end of the episode, I'll mix up a little bit of that tinting color, and I'll fix all these little light blue areas so that I don't have to worry about them. But for now, it's back to the blue. And again, I can't stress it enough. If you guys and girls have any questions, please drop them in the comments below. And I will I will do my best to answer them too. And of course, liking and subscribing is always a help too. As well as clicking the bell icon. There's so many things. Yeah, so make sure you get your notifications. I'm trying to keep it easy so that there aren't random videos all over the place. I mean, this Open Studio always comes out at the same time, same day on Thursday. The live feed is always going to be on Thursday during the day until, you know, something drastically changes. And Tech Tuesday, shocker, is always on Tuesday. So that way you guys and girls know, you know, when things are coming. You don't, I mean, it's nice to have the notification, but you won't need it except for, you know, random lives. But that works too. All right, I think we're getting close with this color. I don't want to overwork it because then I'll see, now you can really just start to, I mean, that brown that I put in first is just floating underneath, which is great. That's really what we're looking for. Let me see if I can move this a little bit, although I don't really think I have to, just a little bit more straight on maybe. There we go. All right. All right, so let's mix up that tinting color. Let's fix that. We'll zoom out a little bit so you get all the bits and pieces. All right, so I put that light blue here, a little bit there, some there, and obviously on the tank, and then I put it on the front fender. So again, so I want to kind of give that a little bit of a bump. I want to get rid of that green. So in order to get rid of that green, I'll use a tiny bit of red. Use the other airbrush since this one has blue in it, and I don't want to take the time to clean it out right now. I think I'm going to use a little bit more complex red. Let's pick crimson. So this is Wicked Crimson. I love this color. If you notice, I don't know if you can see it in the little swipe of paint here, but the crimson has that kind of, not violet at all, but it's got a darkness to it that's different than the absolutely brilliant opaque red, which is a beautiful color. This is my go-to, like, Ferrari color. So the crimson has just that muted darkness to it. So this will make a great tinting color. So I'm going to drop a little bit on the palette because I don't need very much of this at all. If I use an entire drop of this to do this tint, I'll have like a gallon of paint. Not really, but you know, you get it. All right, so I got the Micron B here. It's got water in it. Let me get that out real quick. There we go. Okay. I'll add the same thing, the 40, 50, 40, 11, 1 to 10. I'll put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10's a good amount for this airbrush. It just kind of fills up the bottom of the cup. And then I'm going to grab I'll show you, just like a quarter of a dot of paint, or a drop of paint. That's the crimson. So I'm just going to drop that in here. Now even that quarter of a droplet of paint is going to give me a really pretty stout tinting color. I could have used even less paint than that. So what I'll do is, as I'm kind of mixing it, I draw it up onto the side to see, you know, how it's looking, and this is going to be great. It's going to work out well. I love tinting with the Micron B because it has such a small needle and nozzle. It atomizes paint ridiculously fine, which is what we want here. I don't want to see any droplets of crimson on here. I just want to just gently push that green away. So I'm going to start with this darker one. Again, this is kind of a test run. And just barely let that paint breathe out. Until that shifts away to that steel blue. Now that I know that works, I can move on to the lighter one. Now with the lighter one here, I'm looking more at the edges and then very lightly going over the lightest part. This is almost white, this color here. If I were to put this crimson on in any strength at all, it would immediately turn red because it's mostly white. So, so I'm being extremely careful as I'm doing this part here. Just kind of going a few passes and stopping and looking at it, and that looks good. I'm going to leave it right there. The same thing over here too with these. I got to be kind of careful with these because I don't have any reference. I don't have that green tintish thing that was going on in the other one, so I just got to kind of remember what I did down on the fender and do the same thing up here. So it was about 3 or 4 passes to kind of knock that out, and then the run around to the other parts and do the same thing. That was a little too much, but that's okay on the little yeah, on the foot pad, but that's okay. It'll work out. And up here too, just a little bit, just enough to take the curse off. Excellent. So that's it. That's how easy that was. So that Island Creek blue that I showed you from the last episode that I'm using on that other painting, that's exactly what that was. Just I needed a lot of it, so I mixed up a bunch of it. In that painting, there's a lot, it's a snow scene, so there's a lot of this really subtle shifting like bluish color, and again, that's knowing that that was going to be all over the painting. I mixed up a bunch of it, and I used almost all of it, which is surprising me. Usually those colors I don't end up using a whole ton of. Okay, good. Again, taking care of that now I don't have to worry about it. It's just what I want. All right, let me take a look at this now. Okay. All right, I think I'm gonna hit some of the darker brown now. So I've got all the medium kind of values in, so now I can start darkening this. So I'm gonna clear out the blue here. So I'll get all that blue out. And I'm gonna jump back to the brown, but this is where I'm gonna adjust the brown. I'm gonna add a little bit more black to it. Here we go. Let's get that up here. Maybe give it a quick rinse. It's neat. Now that I'm mixing these two colors together so much on the surface, I mean, I'm cleaning the airbrush out, but if I didn't get all of the blue out, if there was a trace of the blue, it wouldn't matter because we're mixing it all on the surface anyway. So that's a nice thing about doing it this way. All right, the brown. So again, this is the brown, rusty color that I had mixed up. Start with that as the base. Again, the same thing happened when I mixed that brown. That brown is right in the middle. It's not the darkest, it's not the lightest, it's right in the middle. So now I can do all kinds of fun stuff with it. So it's the same kind of thing. Well, let me put the reducer in first. Something like that. And then just one drop of this brown. I said one drop of that brown. There we go. Mix that up. Okay, so with this, so that's the base brown, the base rusty color brown. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit, just a touch of black, and just add that to the mix to darken this up a little bit. This rust is also very cool. You know, it's not like a really orangey rust, which is nice because if it was, I'd have to add a little bit of red to this too. And just a little bit more black. Let's see if we can get some work done here. See how that one is. Yeah, this is very, it's a very cool rusty color, and that makes life a little bit easier. All right, so this is the brown. Let's see what this works. So this goes on top of, like when I was testing the blue down in here, this goes on top of that. So just develop it a little bit. Again, same kind of thing. Like I'm trying this color out here because it's very low commitment here. If something's not right, it's very easy for me to make an adjustment before I get too far into it. And these are also the really darkest areas too. So again, it gives me a chance to really like kind of see what this is going to do. I think it actually needs to be darker. But before I darken it, this body line here, down here, needs to be not as brilliant yellow. So I'm going to go over this really lightly with this color to kind of bring down that yellow. There's some great pale highlights in this too, which are going to be a lot of fun. All that kind of brings it all out. I'm going to run with this color a little bit. Yeah, it could be a little bit darker. I'd cover more. I may be able to, do a little bit more with it, but this is dark enough for now. Be fun to kind of mess with this color and see what I can come up with. So again, I'm working in the middle value range. I'm doing a lot of the stuff in the middle and then working out to the darkest and the lightest. And that's I always work that way. Most of the values in here are in the middle, so you end up locking a lot of the painting in before you get to that. I like to think of it like frosting a cake. So you get all this stuff done before you get to that point where you put those, like, in this case there are no super bright highlights, reflective highlights, but that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Those things for me usually go on last, unless a reflection is like a major part of the painting. Like in the painting Topless, I did a painting of a convertible Corvette that was sitting under some trees, and the reflections in it were a major part of the whole thing. It wasn't like they were just on top. They were everywhere. So that's a little bit different kind of scenario. Yeah, this is lovely. And again, I'm so happy you're here watching this, but I'm also, I find great joy in picking this thing to death. It's really what fires me up as an artist, to see, how much detail I can pack into a painting. But the process is it's fun for me because I'm doing it, but I'm not so sure always that the process is that much fun to watch for people on the outside. So the fact that you're here, I really, really appreciate that. That makes me really happy. But again, I know that, I know this is violently nitpicky, but again, for me, this is what makes my paintings work. They just kind of really digging in, really getting into all that variation in texture and color and all that. That's what really makes it. And this, what you're watching right now, me picking the hell out of this thing, this is where it's different than, like, the biggest thing for photorealists is you get it all the time. It's like, well, you could just take a picture. You get the same thing, just take a picture. But it's not. It's in this layering upon layering of color, and what that ultimately looks like when you clear it, when you varnish it, and the whole thing seems very like stained glass, like just the painting seems to be like a mile deep, and you don't see that when you have a reproduction of it. So when I post it online, or send a photo to someone, it never looks like the real painting. And that's something that you just can't capture with a print or a photo. I'm not saying that it's any better or worse than certainly photography is an incredible art form in and of itself, but the final result, it's a different process of putting pigment onto a surface than it is if you print. If you print, the printers can only work one way, currently. They're not set up to put layers of paint like I'm doing here. They might be able to at some point if someone feels that's important, but currently it's just all printers work the same way. So you get amazing quality and all that, and clarity and color, and the image is there. But the fact that I'm layering semi-transparent, transparent, and opaque paints in multiple layers, again, when you clear this and it has that varnish on it, this painting is a whole different animal than everything else. So it's a neat phenomenon that I really enjoy a lot. Plus, all of it, for being a painter, it's about understanding your environment. A photographer too, but I mean, for a painter, you have to deconstruct everything, and you have to reconstruct it. You have to figure out how it's made up, and then you have to translate that. You have to tell that story, and that's the beauty and the challenge of it. I feel guilty that I get to have all the fun, and the collector really just gets the final result. I feel guilty of that sometimes. And that's it. That's today's rant. Last episode you got paint mixing with Steve. This episode you get painting rants. So this is going to be one of those paintings. I'm going to look at this thing and just think of the hours and hours that were kind of poured into this. But again, that's, for me, those are some of my favorite pieces. It's also about the type of painting you want to do, the style. Like I love realism. I just love telling the story as exactly as it was told to me. It absolutely, and I'll say it a million times, it isn't the only way to tell a story, So if you're an abstract artist, you tell a story in a much different way. Sometimes you don't even tell a story at all. Sometimes you just do what you do so someone can tell their own story in your work. If you're an abstract impressionist, if you're a whatever, all of it. It's just all different ways to tell a story. I just want to see how good the airbrush is working, or how good the paint was working. So I'll do these spokes with either a stencil or the paintbrush, but again, it's the same color. They'll ultimately be the same color. So alright, so I have a mistake here somehow. I missed the bottom of the fender. I don't think it's going to make a huge difference. It just kind of trails off here, but try to reclaim that a little bit. I missed the edge. I just kind of pushed it up to where it wasn't. Yeah, I'll reclaim that a little bit. Actually, now would be a good time to do that. So what I did was I kind of missed that edge. So what I'm going to do to fix that is I'm going to grab the eraser and just kind of remove some of the paint here, which is nice because, again, this is all nasty and rusty. Not nasty, but rusty. So the texture that I develop here. Oh, and I love this paint. This brown is largely made up of the opaque white, so once it's on there, it is on there. I love this stuff. Unless, of course, you're trying to do a reductive technique like erasing, and then it doesn't want to go. which is okay. I'd rather fight it a little bit than have it, you know, fall off every 5 seconds. So I'm just kind of reclaiming that bottom edge of the, trying anyway. It's really holding on well. Again, it's all rusty and mottled, so I don't really need to have it perfect. I just need to give it kind of an indication back. All right, so there you go. So you got rants today. We mixed up the darker brown, starting to get that whole thing kind of locked in. Yeah, I'm happy. So I'm looking at, now I'm backed up here and I'm looking at those blues too. And those have definitely, oh, I missed this one here. I'll have to tint that when I get down there. Not a big deal. But the other ones are kind of put back in their place. Actually, hopefully you can see the difference between the two. You know, this has a little, very faint teal cast to it. So I don't think I did the frame either. Oh well, I'll get them. No problem. All right, so that's what we got for this episode. So thank you very much again for dropping by. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them below. Again, you guys know the drill. Please like, subscribe, and click that bell icon and so you get the notifications of the new videos. And that's what I got. So for Steve Leahy and Open Studio, I will see you all next time.